If you seriously want to build your wealth, there's one thing you must get right: picking the correct tools to make it all happen. When it comes to investing, Fidelity has some of the best investment options available, but since they offer over 9,000 funds to choose from, how do you know which ones will actually grow your net worth without having to pay excessive fees that will slowly drain your investment account? In this video, let's go over the top 5 Fidelity index funds that will make you money forever and can help you fast track your path to financial freedom. First up, we have Fidelity's S&P 500 Index Fund, FXAIX. This is the low-cost index fund that tracks the performance of the almighty S&P 500 index. This means it holds shares of 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in the US, providing exposure to a broad range of industries, including technology, financial services, healthcare, and more. FXAIX is often referred to as a core holding in many portfolios because of its reliable long-term growth potential. FXAIX gives investors instant diversification within the largest US stocks, which historically have been considered a consistent driver of stock market returns. FXAIX has one of the lowest expense ratios for an index fund, coming in at only 0.015%, making it nearly the most affordable way to invest in the US stock market. This equates to you paying just 15 cents for every $1,000 invested. The average returns over the past 1, 3, 5, and 10-year periods have been absolutely juicy as well. $10,000 invested into this fund 10 years ago would be worth more than $30,000. Since this index fund tracks the S&P 500, it's considered the benchmark of the US stock market, and its performance is tied to the ups and downs of the market. But that's not too much to worry about in my opinion, as short-term fluctuations and volatility is normal, and the S&P 500 has historically delivered very strong long-term returns. It also only includes large-cap companies, so you're missing out on potential higher growth opportunities that smaller and emerging companies would provide. The top 10 holdings in this fund are companies you will all recognize. Because FXAIX mirrors the S&P 500, it may also become weighted towards certain sectors such as technology, which currently makes up a significant portion of this index fund. If tech experiences a downturn, it could overly affect this fund. This fund does pay dividends at 1.42%, but this is generally lower than those of funds focusing specifically on higher dividend growth. Personally, for me as an investor, I don't really care about dividends during the accumulation phase of investing, so this isn't a big deal, but I know some people prefer to focus a lot on dividend returns, so if that's the case for you, this fund might not be the best fit. If you are just getting started with investing or are an experienced investor and want a simple, effective way to grow your money over time, FXAIX is a great choice. You are essentially buying a piece of the US economy. This fund is perfect for people looking to build wealth over decades, like for retirement, so it works best when held for 10 plus years. The best strategy, in my opinion, is to set up automatic investing into the fund and just forget about it. With minimal management, this fund works very well since it's a buy and hold investment that rewards people with patience. Overall, FXAIX is ideal for those who want a balance of growth potential and relative stability. If you're enjoying the video so far and want to help support the channel for free, don't forget to hit that like button. Next up is the Fidelity Zero Large Cap Index Fund, also known as FNILX. This is considered to be the no expense ratio version of FXAIX. One thing to note is that this fund tracks the Fidelity US Large Cap Index instead of the S&P 500 directly. That being said, FNILX gives investors exposure to the top 500 US large cap stocks and has no expense ratio to hold the fund. The average returns for this fund are almost identical to FXAIX, which means returns have been outstanding. This means that $10,000 invested 10 years ago would also be worth over $30,000. FNILX is also an index fund that tracks stocks, so you will see ups and downs, which is completely normal. And because the holdings in FNILX are companies you'll all recognize, the top 500 large cap stocks in this fund have provided sweet returns to patient investors. The dividend yield for FNILX starts at 1.14%, so this index fund is not considered a high dividend fund at all, but more of a growth and accumulation fund. Overall, FNILX is ideal for investors who want a balance of growth potential and stability. If you're looking for a simple way to invest into the top 500 large cap companies with no expense ratio, this fund could be perfect for you. Next up is the Fidelity Total Market Index Fund, FSKAX. This is a low-cost index fund that aims to track the performance of the entire US stock market, which is why it holds over 3,800 different stocks. Unlike FXAIX, which focuses only on large cap companies, FSKAX includes companies across all market sizes from large, mid, and small cap stocks. This makes FSKAX the most diversified US index fund available. Because the fund is so diversified, it allows you to benefit from the growth of both established companies and smaller high growth potential companies. It's a great foundational fund for all investors with an expense ratio of just 0.015%, which means you would pay just 15 cents for every $1,000 invested, which is insanely affordable. The average returns over the past 1, 3, 5, and 10 years have also been extremely solid. The returns are slightly lower than the S&P 500 index fund, and although the top 10 holdings are nearly identical, this fund does hold smaller companies which haven't performed as well as the 500 largest US companies. Some might consider this a concern with the fund going forward, but keep in mind that past performance does not indicate future results. Even if you invested just $10,000 into this fund 10 years ago, that money would have grown to over $30,000 today. And I'd personally say that's a pretty solid return. I want to note, however, that while the broad exposure is an advantage, smaller cap stocks tend to be a lot more volatile. This means that the total market index fund may experience slightly more dramatic swings compared to a large cap only fund. Despite including mid cap and small cap stocks, the fund's performance is still largely driven by large cap companies because they make up the majority of its holdings. The dividend yield is 1.4%, so it's not ideal for investors looking for dividend income, but if you're like me, this isn't really an issue. If you're looking for a stress-free way to invest into the entire US stock market, FSKAX may be considered a core holding in your portfolio. And this holding will definitely help you sleep peacefully at night. I personally like to refer to this fund as the buy and hold investor's utopia. Because it covers the entire US stock market, it wouldn't make sense to hold both this fund and an S&P 500 fund at the same time, so I would just pick one or the other and stick with it. FSKAX is ideal for investors seeking a balanced mix of large cap companies to small emerging businesses most of us have never even heard of. It's also ideal for those with long time horizons because it captures the growth of the entire market over time, which has historically delivered very good returns. Unlike funds that may be concentrated in specific sectors, FSKAX spreads its exposure broadly across industries, which reduces the risk of any one sector dominating your portfolio. Next up, we have the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund, otherwise known as FZROX. This is an index fund that tracks the entire stock market, just like FSKAX. But the difference here is that this index fund has no expense ratio. So this fund is free to own entirely. I would just consider this pretty much the no expense ratio version of FSKAX. FZROX seeks to track the entire US stock market with over 2,500 holdings inside the fund currently. The average returns are nearly identical to FSKAX, so returns over the last 1, 3, 5, and life of fund have been very solid. Now, because this fund was created in 2018, $10,000 invested into this fund 5 years ago would be worth more than $20,000. The top 10 holdings in FZROX will all be companies you will recognize, but just like FSKAX, this fund holds companies that are not only large cap stocks, so you will see slightly more volatility compared to something like an S&P 500 index fund. The dividend yield for this fund sits at 1.23%, so this is also not a high dividend paying index fund, but more of a growth fund. If you are looking for a simple way to invest into the entire US stock market with no expense ratio, this fund could be perfect for you. Last but not least, we have the Fidelity Nasdaq Composite Index Fund, or FNCMX. This is an index fund that seeks to track the performance of the Nasdaq Composite Index, which is another major US stock market index. FNCMX holds over 2,800 different US stocks and can be considered a more aggressive fund than an index fund that tracks the S&P 500. At the moment, it is weighted more towards the technology sector than any other sector. The fund's current expense ratio sits at just 0.3%, which means you would pay $3 per $1,000 invested, and this is a much higher expense ratio compared to the other funds mentioned previously in this video. Because it's more aggressive, the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year returns have been higher than the S&P 500 index. This means that $10,000 invested 10 years ago would bring your balance to over $38,000, which is an extremely great return on your money. The top 10 holdings are similar to the companies in the S&P 500, but like I mentioned earlier, this fund is more weighted towards technology stocks such as Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia, which brings more overall risk than an S&P 500 index fund. The dividend yield for this fund is currently at 0.67%, so this is definitely not a dividend income fund whatsoever. If you're an investor who would like a fund more aggressive than the S&P 500 and can stomach the increased volatility over the long-term horizon, this could be a great fund to possibly consider adding to your portfolio. Consistently buying and holding quality index funds is one of the best ways to build your wealth passively and help you achieve financial freedom. Not having to worry about picking stocks and knowing that index funds will make you a millionaire in the long term should definitely help you sleep peacefully at night. That is it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more future videos just like this. Your life is a masterpiece, so let's unlock your full financial potential together. And with that, I will catch you in the next one. Take care.